And we're live.
Hello, hello! Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and team players to that 6+++ show. I am your host, Tom, and today we're talking all things teams, and I'm going to get a big old dose of FOMO because we're talking about an event I'm not even going to, rubbish times. But here today to guide you through that, as ever, is my dear leader, Chris. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm all right, slightly stressed. It's been a
You are stressed. Chris is
panic for the
stressed
last
today, everyone.
40 minutes. We've got work emails, which is the bane of my life, flying around. It is a nightmare, but we're here for a nice, calm, relaxed 5 hours or however long it's going to take to discuss all things Warhammer and
Good.
teams.
Good. So if people want to send Chris nice little reassuring messages of calm in the chat, say nice things to him about him,
Or tell
etc.
me how to email head teachers and that stuff.
Or yeah, give him advice for getting
Give
out
them
of
advice.
stressful work situations. Any of the above, very welcome, and I know that he'll really value that.
Yeah.
Also tonight, the very best of us, Ed. How are you doing, Ed?
I'm not bad. I'm here to be loud, to stress Chris out, and to make opinions sound like facts.
Good. Good,
Yeah.
and you'll do all of those things very well. I mean, you've got a lot of nerve showing up here for reasons that we will discuss in a minute.
Oh God, what have I done?
Um, but no, I don't want to give that away just yet. But I'm really excited to have you on, and I think I'll be really interested. I don't think I've picked your brains properly about teams before, so I'll be really interested to hear what you have to say about it. So, structure is going to be as follows, guys. We're going to do a couple of little promo things for a Plus roundup because we're all about what we're going to do rather than what we're currently doing right now. So we'll tell you some stuff we've got in the pipeline, and then we're going to really deep dive into teams. We've got the Birmingham Teams Tournament this weekend. There's tons of teams going. We have two 6++ teams attending, which is massively exciting. So what we're going to chat about is teams and why you should play it. It is a brilliant format. We're going to talk about how it works and what's great about it, and then we'll talk about some of the things we have learned in our admittedly quite young team's career about building armies and teams for a team's event, and some of the things you can do as a team to sort of prep and get ready for it and do some thinking about it. Then at the end, we got some real doozies of listener questions in the Discord this week, so we will dig a few of those out, and Ed, Chris, and myself will have a stab at that. So, Plus Roundup. This is going to be... We've started sketching out new things and things we're going to be bringing to you in the future for 10th edition in particular. But starting even sooner than that, we have a new form of content in the offing, and I wondered... if Ed, you might like to tell people what that is.
Well, I wasn't aware I was going to be announcing this, which is fine. But coming soon to a screen near you, there's going to be a new show.
Oh yes.
And you might ask, when is this show going to be? Well, the name of the show is the Every Other Thursday Show. So as you can infer, it's going to be Mondays weekly.
Yeah, exactly that.
It's going to be me and Davey. We're going to sit there for an hour, and then we're going to go away. We've got lives. Fuck you. I want to have to do something in my evening as well. And we haven't worked out what we're doing, but we'll be silly, rambunctious, and we'll talk about some things that might be relevant to Warhammer, I guess.
It's going to be really exciting. Obviously, as we've said in the chat behind the scenes, you're both dead to me now because we've accidentally launched your fledgling clear, and you've thrown it back in my face by continuing to be a consistent part of my team and honouring all other commitments, and also doing something additional that's only going to help us. So I'm crushed and devastated.
I haven't even started the spin-off channel yet.
Ed
The
plus
5++ show.
yeah. But don't worry, everybody. I've thought a lot about how to stop this from happening, and basically everyone's going to only be allowed to have their hands on the screen going forwards, not their faces.
Yeah.
I've taken a leaf out of other jealous corporations' books on how to not only control your talent, but also ensure that those viewing it enjoy it less, which I think is a really important thing to do if you want people to like what you do. So yeah, don't worry, it'll all be hands from next week, no faces anymore. I'm letting Ed have his face for one last time.
It's not too late to make us sign a load of spiteful NDAs.
That'd be great. That'd be really funny. Chris, you do have reassuring messages coming through in the chat, mate. You've got
Excellent.
"Love you, Chris" from Scrivo.
Oh, thanks.
Captain Caveman has said Ed is coming through with a bit of an echo, which is a slightly odd bit of reassurance, but I'm sure it was intended to make you feel better. And a certain Chantel Miller has put some little kissy smiley faces in there, so that's very nice, isn't it? That's very very. Maybe you should slide them a DM after the show. See what's what.
Weird.
Just so we don't look like Techcasts, should point out that is Chris's partner.
Yeah. I had faith in our listeners to work that out, but you're right. We don't want to come across like some sort of weird frat boys.
Just recently, we're not sex pets.
And if we were, we wouldn't give it away on here.
No.
For those of you who heard that and are concerned, we're definitely not sex pets, and we will now be looking out for Tom.
The more we say it, the more convinced they'll get, I think. So that's great. Right, okay. The other police roundup thing, this is still very much in formation, but one of the bits of content we are planning on doing as soon as 10th arrives is something a little index league. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit, Chris?
So we're kind of discussing, obviously we want to hit the ground running with all the content. We don't have the advantage of getting everything ahead of schedule, but we are going to be on the ball. So I think from everyone else's perspective, when 10th drops, they're going to want to see their new armies in action, a variety of lists. They're going to want to know, as they play test, they want to know what other people's experiences are of the play testing. So we've got a couple of things we're going to do, like faction focuses for everything. We all have a variety.
We'll do all the indexes. Will get some kind of faction focus.
Yeah, just a little video, just like kind of a gotcha guide almost, just so that you can learn a bit about each army, so that when you go to events, you kind of know what to look out for. So we're going to do those, and we're also as a team going to be running kind of like a league competition style thing.
Yeah,
we haven't got specifics yet, kind of in the discussion point there, but the idea will be each player will get access to a particular index, and then they'll be running that, and then we're going to track the progress, track the matches, probably do it both in person and on TTS. We'll get as many of those on battle reports. It might just be like little snapshot video tournament updates, like this is the week in action, whatever. Hey, maybe we could run a fantasy league with it. That'd be exciting.
Oh, that would be really cool. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. Put all your money on Eldari and Chris, people, because there's no way he's not taking it. And
this is it. We could have like a live draw of the order in which people can pick their faction.
That's brilliant. I like it. I like it a lot. I like that a lot. Yeah, let's definitely do that.
I can screw you over.
And so obviously, no, it's all right. I say I'll take one of my weird, wonderful factions without a doubt. I think this will be really fun. We are not, we're not, so we don't have early access. We're not prepped for 10th. We don't know what things are coming, and we won't be coming at it in that sense, but what we absolutely can do is take you guys through our learning experience of figuring these armies out. I think a lot of us are very good at figuring stuff out and working through armies, and I think this will be really fun content to make to accompany that. There'll be a sort of competitive dimension to it, but it'll be lots of fun because it's a Wild West out there. We don't know quite what we'll be doing, how things will work into different armies, and we'll give it a good go. We've got a range of players, and some of them aren't as sort of content-minded as others within the team. But as Chris says, we'll make sure that we've got reports coming in, and everyone in the team that wants to sort of check in with you guys and talk through the process of learning how to figure out the army in 10th will be doing so. So you might even see a few faces in there that you don't see as often, which would be really, really exciting as well.
I'm going to say this on a recorded stream, so we have to do it because people will be disappointed if we don't. Definitely newsreader style,
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure there's lots of get green screen, and then get like the tickers running across it, and bring.
I mean, you've already got half of that. You've got the tickers.
Yeah.
Got the Jeff Jefferson and
that's it.
And Kamara.
Why doesn't Aaron have any units on his back objective? I don't know, Jeff.
Oh, poor Aaron.
Doesn't even wear glasses.
So, boys have moved off your home objective, Jeff. Okay. I saw that move. I thought there was a sub. I thought I'd be congratulated to it.
Oh, so good, so good.
I like how we've now devolved into comedy British like journalism, I guess.
Yeah.
Just riffs on.
Yeah.
There is no content too niche.
No, exactly that. I think the wider world needs us doing impressions of pundits who are probably slightly out already of rotation in the main. Former pundits only in this house. That's what we're all about. Elo Wuzu says 6++ is the weirdest group of frat boys, and I'm inclined to agree. Absolutely. Absolutely. We haven't got a house yet to put us all in, but we will get one. It's a matter of time. Absolutely a matter of time. And Scriver says, I'm going to have to fight for one of my two. He does mean, he's only got Dark Angels and Orcs, so I guess just be higher up in the draft than Aaron. That's my advice. Just get up there.
Yeah, and Paul.
And Paul.
You fucked done? Or you playing?
Yeah. All the Necrons are coming out. Yeah, one way or the other. We'll work it out, Scriver. Don't you worry. Great. Okay. So those are very exciting things that we really look forward to. I'm very excited to watch the Ed and Davey show. I think that's going to be super, super fun. So yeah, we'll keep lots of stuff coming at you over the next few weeks as we get ready. And when those indexes drop, we are going to come out all guns blazing and make sure that there's a ton of information for you guys to consume. We'll cover all our favourite armies first, and then we'll work out the ones we don't know so well and make sure there's something on there for everyone. Scriver says, all good, I can smash with whatever, and I am inclined to agree, sir. Go get them. Okay, brilliant. Right, teams events. Very serious business. This weekend, it is the Birmingham Teams Tournament. This is a UKTC Teams Tournament. Very big, lots of teams going. 6++ is taking 2 teams. So what we're going to do is chat through a little bit about teams. I'm going to mostly quiz Chris and Ed about their thoughts and processes as they get ready for this one and use that as our way into thinking about it. But first, how on earth does Teams 40k work, Chris? I thought 40k was a singles game and that I didn't really have to talk to or know anybody in order to play it.
Well, that's just crazy talk, Thomas. I'll tell you why. So when I first started getting into competitive 40k, kind of hearing about the only Teams event you kind of heard about was the WTC, which is obviously the international one, and you'd listen to it on podcasts, and it sounded really rather interesting. So it was actually really great that UKTC have brought them over and started running a couple a year, which started last year. You've also got the guys up north, Allies of Convenience, as well as Northern Warlords guys. They run some upper element games. And basically, you're still playing your individual matches, but you're working as a team. And it's your collective score against their collective score. So it's initially when I first started hearing about it and you hear them talking about the pairings process, it's all very confusing because you're like, well, but you as a team want some matchups and they want some matchups. So how do you agree on it? And that's one of the really interesting elements. It's kind of a game within a game. You're putting forward attackers and defenders, and they're doing the same, and you're trying to get the matchups that you want. So that's one really interesting element. You've then got the other element that when you're playing your game, besides certain specific formats, you're still playing for. You're trying to create the biggest differential.
Yeah, it's differential scoring, isn't it? So every point from every game counts.
Yeah, every point for every game counts. And if you think like when you're playing in a singles event and you've walked into a horrendous matchup and you're like, well, I know I've lost this from turn 1, turn 2. Let's just call it. Whereas actually in teams, you're able to talk this through. You're able to play it out and you're working to like narrow that gap as much as possible because actually that could be the difference between a win and loss. I mean, we've been to 4 team events now and we've definitely had some games which have come down to like the barest of margins across like 4 or 5 matches. So every point really does count. And so you've got that element that you're playing for your team even when you're thrown under the bus or in a tough match.
Yeah. Remember waiting for Lee to try and beat those Tzeentch demons against the Savvy Submariners team. That was a stressful time. Everything on the line. And yeah, absolutely. Why do we think it's the best format? Is it just because a bunch of people who've already barricaded in the international teams tell us that it is? Or is there something more to it than that?
What do you reckon, Ed?
Hit me with that one again. I'm on the earlies.
Why is Teams the best format, Ed? Ed's going to say it's not.
It's not. I've only been to one Teams event, which I actually think is a fun story to tell, but I'll do that later on.
Okay.
because it is the story. I think it's a lot of fun because it takes it from just being you can play different things. You can play a wider range of things. Obviously, there's
Yeah.
always going to be you want to take, for example, you want to take something that's going to be good into a wide range of armies, which
Yeah.
right now Custodes is good as a defender army. You might want to take Iron Hands because they will shoot the shit out of the board. You might want to take something fast that can score a lot of points, yada yada yada. But within that, you have a bit of flexibility, and I could play like a super jank anti-melee list if we were in a meta where we were seeing a lot of Bloody Rose Sisters, and I could play Shadow Keepers. I could play the list that I thought was really good back when I played you at the Invitational, which turns out it's a dogshit list because it's just 8, 8, and 7 Custodes Guardians with shields and swords, and it does nothing. But I was really convinced that was going to be good. That could be good in a team's meta, and that's like a fun, different dynamic. That in singles, you just get wrecked. You play things that you go, oh god, I've drawn the short straw here. But you can try and direct it into something that's good. If you have someone on the team that you don't like, you can just give them 5 dogshit matchups.
Absolutely.
And then when they win the tournament for you by only losing like 2 or 3 points each time, you can endlessly rinse them because you're like, we lost 5 games. We had to carry your ass. So there's a lot of really, really fun angles there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's a few important things that you hit on there. It's like it makes it bigger than yourself in terms of you've got a bunch of other players. I don't know if you've been to events with your team buddies, but actually you can end up only catching them really for a little bit of the day and then the evening. And the evening's always good fun, but actually that's not a lot of time considering, I think a lot of us actually go away for these weekends to catch up with the people we already know and we like. In a teams event, you really are bonded together. There's real camaraderie. You can be checking in every game. You're all playing on the row along from each other, and that's awesome. And as you say, 40k is obviously a game where there's always 1 or 2 things that are a bit out of whack, and that's probably likely to be the way it is forever.
It's
it's not easy.
They're doing a pretty good job. They've got
I completely agree.
a lot closer than it has.
It mitigates it in teams because there's only going to be 1 of each army, so those armies will be there, but actually there's still a bunch of slots on a team to fill, and the game becomes partly about mitigating what those scary armies do. Because as we'll talk about, you can put lists in that are designed to, at the very least, go down swinging and make sure it's close, because that's a big deal in teams. But it also means there's space to innovate and design things, come up with interesting spins on things, in the knowledge that if you pair well and you use the pairing system effectively, you can avoid those really worst case matchups. Which as you're alluding to, when the meta's a certain way, certain armies become inevitable. You will hit them in singles once you get higher up, and in teams that isn't the case in quite the same way with the pairing system. So yeah, that all makes it massively compelling, I think. We'll outline and just reiterate the basics of how the format works, but I think we've discussed the fundamentals. It's all 5 games are played, the total differential. You've got WTC scoring, which slightly simplifies it. It's basically the differential gets reduced down to a scale from 20 to nothing, right? And you meet closer and closer depending how tight the score was. So
yeah, every 5 points is worth a point either way.
So a narrow loss to Jack Tight, as Ed and myself know, is actually a draw in WTC scoring, which is really nice. Helps us feel good. So within this, you've got the pairings process, which I think is probably where a lot of the finesse and the mystery of teams is. Chris, do you want to sort of summarize the basics of how the pairings process works?
Yeah, it's hard to do. Essentially, so both teams put forward a defender. So you pick an army, 1 out of your 5 you put forward. So each have put down a defender. You don't know what the opposition have put down. You then flip them over. Okay, so now we see, let's say we're playing War Masters, okay?
Yay!
So have put down a defender, and War Masters have put down a defender. Now, we have to pick 2 attackers, and we put those up against War Masters defender. So we're going to think, who do we want to give them a choice from? They're going to do the same for us. We then reveal those. Now we have a decision to make. We have seen that we've put down Guard, and War Masters have put down Custodes and Blood Angels. We have to do Guard. What do you want to take? Would you rather play the Custodes or would you rather play the Blood Angels? Whatever we choose is now a game, is now a matchup. War Masters do the same thing. So we have now got 2 created matchups, and we've got 2 armies that were kind of discarded, one from each. They go back into the pile. So we have now got left 3. We've now got 3 armies left. We're then going to do the same process again, and then through that choosing and selecting process, you essentially come to 5 matchups chosen. So the skill is in your army selection, making sure you've got armies that can kind of cover a variety of matchups.
Mm-hmm.
The skill is in trying to navigate this horrendous tree of possibility and probability as you're trying to work out what your opponent's most likely to do, and therefore if you do that, if you do X and they do Y, then this is what's going to be the consequence, this is what's going to be left over. And even just in 5-mans, the probabilities, like when we find out our first pairing, we will sit down and we will go through almost like every permutation that we think is likely, and it takes forever.
It
and
really
you
does.
still won't cover many, because although you can predict what their first defender is, you're then, as soon as you start thinking, well, if they choose this one, then this is left over, and it just has a massive knock-on effect, and it just creates too much stuff to calculate. So you kind of have to use your knowledge of the game, a bit of a gut instinct, and accept that you will definitely get it wrong. I think it's probably my first tip of the day. Fully accept that at least once in a weekend you will get your pairings wrong, and you'll be out paired, and you'll be in an upward battle. But yeah, that's the kind of the 101. And obviously sometimes the big guys play the 8-man events, which we've got coming up in.
Oh, I'm dreading it because it's
3
the
weeks.
pairings for that is going to be insane.
And yeah, I guess, I mean, we've never done an 8-man pairings before, but I guess it's a matter of breaking down it into like the little mini games and just trying to win each little pairing aspect. But yeah, no, it's a really cool thing. Being a captain for it's quite harsh because when you get it wrong, your team's just staring at you like, let me play into this, and why am I playing into this? This is all your fault. And when it goes right, obviously, it's never, oh, wow, you paired us to the win. The players won the game, didn't they?
You're going to get that from me for 5 rounds because I'm playing a defender list. And I'm like, why have you given me a shit matchup? As my job as the Custodes player. Why do I have to play Iron Hands again? Well, fuck is this, Chris? So just look forward to that.
Oh, yeah, I'm fully ready, mate.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's one of those times where I think being a captain becomes a very real, tangible thing in 40k, which is interesting. So it does have a bit of that sporting tension within it. Although it's worth saying, the War Masters win that we got, that was all on you. But when we're going into that round, I was like, oh no, I don't like this. I don't like our plan. I don't like what Chris wants us to do. And then it worked. So it's, you have to give credit where that's due. But yeah, it comes with the pressures of making decisions and having to stand by those choices. And just like in normal 40k, there's some other people who are also trying to do it and to stop you doing it. And much like real 40k, some of those guys are very, very good at it, and every now and again you just get completely run rings around, and that's the way that it goes.
What you can do
that's
is
why
play.
I motion
God.
random number generator.
Yes.
So this is one thing when we played touch on it is actually I think we probably mentioned before, we played a team on the Sunday morning. They rocked up and they were like, we're just going to randomly generate it, and they just randomly. And as soon as they did that, you're like, well, nothing we do anymore. So when we played Dice Down, we were genuinely tempted. We were outpair us. So as it is, as we've said before, when we played Dice Down, what basically happened was at the end they've done literally the opposite of every single thing we thought they would do. But on their podcast, they said we kind of outpaired them.
They did, and then they mashed us anyway.
I think the random number generation is probably only worth doing if you're playing against teams that are significantly better than you. So we won't be doing that at all this weekend. As coming in.
No, neither 6++ team will, because they won't.
But War Masters, they're probably going to have to.
Yeah, they'll definitely have to.
Jack's in the chat. Hi,
Jack. Sounds like Jack is on first defender duty. I wonder what he will be running.
Oh, I wonder.
How interesting.
I played him with my first defender list, and we had a grand old time with a classic WTC draw.
Yeah, the absolute
fun
dream.
was had by all.
Sean Capewell also said, is that a ring light in your room now, Tom? Sean, this is not a ring light. I just have 2 screens because I've been doing lots of marking, so I'm just lit up by more screens than normal. I'm still very much in the Stone Age otherwise. And Paul correctly says that the evening is for consuming ungodly amounts of chicken wings. Absolutely.
Jack Tight says 6++ shit talking again. Don't we remember Peterborough?
No, I don't.
I don't, Jack, because I wasn't
recall.
there.
No, I don't
either.
recall. I'm confident if us three had been there, it would have all been very different. And that's that. I can say that based on no evidence because I'm the one on the camera. So there we are.
I'm 100% confident that if the three of us played you at the same time,
No, it's still Pippet by 2 points. It's just it's just the way he be. He do be like that. Very talented man. Okay, right. We're gonna now enter into sort of how you guys have been prepping and how you guys have been thinking about teams because I think you'll have lots of good examples. So let's start with how you select armies and lists for teams because this I think is a really interesting part, and I've definitely been at teams events where you can feel a player is realizing across the event they've not got something that works in a team's environment at a given moment in time, and it does require you to think a little differently, so it's worth thinking about the ways in which you think a little bit differently when you do that. I guess, Eddie, maybe if you start us off, what sorts of things might you look for in an appropriate team's army or list?
So the first thing is you've got to look at what you collectively have. Unfortunately, if it was just you going into, I don't know, League of Legends, you could just be like, oh, you could play this champion because everyone has everything. Slightly different when each army costs like £300 to £500. So you've got to look and be like, okay, cool, we have this, and this, and there's a reason that we're not playing Iron Hands, and that's because we don't have Iron Hands.
We don't.
So
we have normal hands. They're all that's allowed on the screen as of
Yeah.
next week. Yeah.
Hey!
Hey! Callback. That's the
So-
kind of classy commentary you get. Over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why we have not a hodgepodge, but we have some armies that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see. And it's also, you've got to look at the overlap as well. So I remember when we were looking at this, there were about 3 of us that had, just overlap on armies. I think there were a couple of us playing guards. I put forwards Grey Knights, someone else put forward Grey Knights, I put forwards Tau, someone else put forwards Tau. Like you've got to look at what you can do, and it might not be someone's first choice, but your second choice might be better than the other person having to play their fourth choice.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So you can be guided by the armies that you have, and also the ones people have comfortable with and have experience with. I think that's always really important. That's usually better, I think, than just winging it with something that's new or hot most of the time. There are some players that can.
Well, I'm playing EC Custodes, and I haven't played Custodes competitively since I went 1-4 at Unconquerables because
That is true.
I tricked myself into playing a really shit list.
That is true.
So
But
my
you've been
prep
working
is-
hard, haven't you?
My prep hasn't been teams prep. My prep has been play a game every night for the last
Yeah,
2 weeks.
I was going to say you have sunk the effort in for this. You really have got it. And again, so if you are able to do that and willing to do that, and it's awesome that Ed has done that, then that's great. But obviously, it depends a bit on the contingencies that you have.
If you can't do that, sell your ticket. You don't deserve to go.
Yeah, don't worry. No scrubs at the teams event. We don't have any time for that. You know that we here stand for cutthroat, cutting edge competition, and we don't want any bang average players taking up
For me,
those
it was a
mid-tables.
case of everyone else is going with something that they're practiced on, and I'm not going to drag the team down by
Yeah,
rocking
yeah.
up and be like, I guess I stand on the objectives. Oh, it's a 0-20.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's useful also to break up sort of types of armies as well. So obviously you have your big hitters in the meta at a given moment in time, but the reasons those armies might be a big hitter in the meta vary. And that's where the whole attacker-defender distinction comes in, right? Because an attacker list, broadly speaking, is one that is very powerful but is also going to wreck what it fights. It's going to put a huge hole in something, not let it get any points, and win by a massive margin. So those kinds of lists, I guess Iron Hand is a great example, but I think you could probably put Guard in this into some matchups as well. They're going to rack up a huge score, demolish the enemy, and give your team one of those big differentials. 20-0 obviously being the best possible. For is that like a 50-point swing? Is that what you get?
Yeah, 50.
But anything in the higher numbers for that is obviously great. So 1 or 2 lists in the team that can absolutely rinse things and put those big points on the board and keep your opponents scared and have your opponents trying to match away from them and mitigate them is really good to have. But defenders defenders are also very valid and very relevant. As our resident defender right now, Ed, which is a job I've done many a time, do you want to tell people what being a good defender is all about?
What being a good defender about is ripping the arms off your models and and turning those shield guard custodies who are bad and not good into wardens who
Yes.
are good and not bad.
Yes.
So that's what I've been working on while
Keep the
I'm
arms. Keep the
playing
arms.
TTS. Yeah, I've been putting sprues. Like, hold on, if I just turn around, pick up handfuls of sprues. I've been cooking in the lab, as they say. That
Excellent.
one's for you, Jack. Me, you, and the youth. I should probably stop with like inside jokes that don't really make sense to anyone else.
Never. I refuse.
I don't even remember what the question was. I just started talking.
Oh, what's a defender list, Ed?
A defender list is something that's going to get like 60 to 80 points every game, no matter how good your opponent's list is. And it's player skill, so you can't just rock up with anything and be like, "Oh, I've got 50 points." The game is saved because then you just get tabled and you get 0 points and you go, "Oh no, I've really let the team down." You still got to be able to play the list, but you want to play something. Attacker lists, as you were saying, get big points, but they're polarizing.
Yes.
So if if your opponent gets the swing on you, you just get like nothing. Whereas with this Custodes list, I've got loads of OBSEC. I've got loads of infantry. I'm very tanky. I'm going to get banners. I'm going to get behind enemy lines. I'm going to get primary. And I'm going to stop you from getting primary. That's sort of the gist of it. I'm going to keep your score around like capping out at an 80.
Yeah.
And my score is probably going to cap out at around an 80 as well. But if I can do those two things, and
That's
I get
perfect.
an 11-9, a 9-11, a 10-10, something in the middle there, things have gone well for me.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think armies where they don't give away obvious secondaries, so there's not obvious points to be gleaned out of killing them, they have a solid or at least dependable secondary game and a solid primary game. Necrons are a great example for this, right? It's like you have to kill a whole OBSEC army off objectives. They can be very high scoring in
I
that
think
sense.
old Necrons were. I'd be cautious about it now because they're free no prisoners.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So my list gives up 80 wounds on no prisoners, 3 characters, 2 points on bring it down. There's not really anything that you can pick to score into me if you're playing like Tau, for example, where you have 2 secondaries that are good and then no third secondary as well.
Yeah. No, definitely. So you do want to be designing with that in mind, trying to mitigate it. Rob Kimpton says, playing as a defender sounds like a lot of fun. It is, Rob. I think, psychologically speaking, it's for those who enjoy being scrappy and putting up a fight rather than those who enjoy tabling the vulnerable. Both sorts find a home in teams, and some of them love the different roles, and you can hear their opinions all over the place. Sean Catewell says World Eaters does do that. Yeah, World Eaters is a great defenders list, Sean Catewell, because it scores super well whilst it's getting killed. It's got a lovely threshold, very consistent, and again, doesn't give away easy...
They're probably a
easy
good
points.
attacking list as well.
Yeah,
good.
Well, that's it. They're one of those, and I think this is true of all defenders. My GSC are another example of this, because GSC are quite defendery in that they're playing their game. They're going to get a ton of points, and it's kind of on you to stop them.
Yeah.
But then into some matchups, they do just go, you just get completely killed now, and you have no stuff. And they very specific. They can absolutely turn it on. World Eaters, one thing that I love about World Eaters as a defenders list is it's just the Khorne deny just means that even psychic game into them becomes this lottery. People can't reliably take secondaries; they're relying on a tool into them because of the chance of it failing. So yeah, I think there's a place for both those types there, and working out what the balance in your team is. I guess you usually want a couple of each of those. You want a mix of sort of combat-y and ranged armies in a team as well, because typically within the meta there'll always be 1 or 2 standouts in those fields, but there's also going to be other armies who are more vulnerable into them. Teams, I think, for example, Drukhari do a bit better in teams at the moment because they bully a lot of combat armies, and in teams they can usually be paired to avoid the 1 or 2 that have the mechanics that ruin their day. So they're a bit stronger in teams, and they can really go all in on shutting other players down and killing them off. Jack says that Necrons are very well represented. 30% of all teams at Brum have a Necrons list. There you go. That would certainly feed into that. I think so. They're quite a popular army this edition, so it makes sense. And so yeah, you get those two mentalities. You've got to go out and get big wins, or you've got to go out and spoil big wins, slow the enemy down. And what's nice about teams is whatever role you find yourself in, and if pairings, sometimes in pairings you end up in a different role to the one you thought you were going to be in, right? You thought you were going to go in there and mull or something, and then it's like, oh no, I've got the thing that I dread facing. So now you're in defender mode, and you've got to try and mitigate that and slow it down. But again, with communication in the team, you'll know what that is. You'll know what the sort of likely outcomes are, and then you can just fight and scrap for every point you can possibly get.
The communication being "fuck you, Chris."
Yeah. It's funny actually. The first few times you play against like seasoned teams players, you do see the difference that it makes. Because I didn't really ever care about score differential. I was one of these players where I was always very happy to win. As happy to win by 2 points as I was to win by 50 points. I really don't mind. And I was often quite standoffish and control-y in how I play rather than sort of knockout. But I think having done teams a bit more and started looking at and thinking about differentials more, I've definitely move towards sort of swinging punches a bit more when I play.
Makes you a much better player.
Oh, well, it is right. Yeah, exactly. That is, it's playing at full throttle all the time, isn't it? Rather than easing off, which I think is not something you want to be doing in teams.
There is a middle ground, though. You've got to be careful not to deny your opponent to the point of not scoring any points.
Yes.
As I did at Nottingham, I went 4-1, which was fine. But I was the lowest ranked 4-1 player.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
You get a fucking point of primary, I'm killing you the next turn. How dare you step on those objectives? Turn in round 1, on turn 2, I zeroed my opponent's primary by standing on his home objective as Tau, which was fun. But then you end up at like rank 70 on the tournament. You don't get any ITC points.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so those are some of the basics. And now I guess, Chris, we can get inside your head and start thinking about what sorts of things you and the team have done to prepare for this. What the sort of process has been of assembling some attackers, some defenders, and starting to think about how that team will function at the team's event.
Yeah, so I think, as Ed said, the first port of call is obviously you have to choose or see what armies are available.
Yeah.
When we're being reasonably realistic here, we're not going here with the high expectation of conquering everybody.
We're going to win. Both teams are going to win the whole thing.
Yeah, speak for your fucking self.
So because you still want to make sure everyone's happy in the team and playing the armies that they want to. I think that should definitely be a priority. Another thing you also want to consider is how well people know their lists and their armies. It's all well and good us saying, oh yeah, no one's got Iron Hand successors, so maybe we could borrow that off someone. And if that person then rocks up to the event with zero experience with that army, they're not going to be able to play it well. So therefore you want people who know their army well, or in the case of someone like Ed who's willing to put the time and effort into.
I was just thinking, fuck, why didn't we just borrow Iron Hands? I don't know.
Because we've got Paul and his Dark Angels.
This is the thing. Paul, the one-man band, was never going to let anyone else have the Marines.
Exactly. So your decision making needs to come about from aspect of what armies have you got and what do people want to play, and then it's about fine tuning it from there into specific options. You need to make sure you've got defender lists. These lists that either just score well or are just strong in the meta, especially when you're playing 5-man team events. I think there's a very strong argument for just taking the 5 best armies out there, which most people seem to be doing from what we've looked at. I remember last year there was a team event where it was only win-loss, and at the time,
that was so rubbish.
At the time, Tau, Custodes, and Harlequins were the best 3 armies by a long way.
Yeah, the meta was cancer at that moment in time.
Every team was Tau, Harlequins, and Custodes versus Tau, Harlequins, and Custodes, and then each team had 2 extra things, and all that
were there just to soak the.
Yeah. And all that mattered was that you managed to pair it, so your Tau, Harlequins, and Custodes won their 3 games. So you won the event. So that was not a good time.
No, that was
rubbish. Right. The meta got much healthier after that when Nids released.
Yeah.
There
were no team events, so that's fine. We went to one, and Tom got to play into Nids, so that was.
I did. Was that? Oh yeah, I played Innis's Nids. I beat Nids, I think, twice before that. But I did not beat Innis's Nids. I got utterly rinsed.
That's really surprising.
Yeah, I know. It was a real shock.
Has he played Nids before?
He had some degree of experience with them, and he had 2 harpies, and he just was. we had a much better time having a nice chat after the game, which did not take long. Although I did pair myself into that on purpose so that the other lads could have a nice final game, because morale was quite low, and I was like, I'm going to fucking jump on this, even though it's not a good matchup for me at all.
I think I can tell this story without anyone being upset about it. So at the teams event that I'm going to talk about, I was subbing in for Team England, and we played against Team Scotland.
Oh, wow.
And Robbo and Innes were both playing GSE.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked across the table after I was having a really difficult game into a lovely chap who I played before at Manchester, 6 months before. So it was really nice to have a catch up with him, have a game, and we were having a really tight game, and I was stressing. And I looked across, and I was like, "Where have they gone?" They were just having a wander around. They'd just taken a 10-10, and they were playtesting Votan into each other because this was as Votan was just coming out.
That's really
so they
funny.
were proxying Votan, having a great time, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, so this list here, the foot slogging list, it doesn't work," or I can't remember which way around it was.
Yeah,
But, that was great times.
That's extremely funny. Extremely funny. I can't remember where we were at before
So
that.
we were at. So you started to think about what armies you're taking,
Yeah.
but now you need to kind of like dig into the lists. And I know when I first started hearing about teams, you'd hear about like kind of these really skew lists, like, oh, we'll take an army which is really good at anti-vehicle. So we'll, I don't know, AdMech 89 Striders, Lads Chickens, whatever. People talk about these really heavy skew lists. And there's definitely always a kind of like a thought process behind that, and actually you might end up doing that. What you have to remember when you're compiling your lists is the reality is that if you have one list that is very good into anti-vehicle, it's almost certainly never going to play into the one army
Yeah.
that is all the tanks. It's really, really easy to kind of just avoid these horrendous matchups when it's like so obvious. You have to be some sort of absolute genius with the pairings process.
I guess
Um,
the only way it would work is if you could put it forward as a defender list because it scores so well, and
Yeah.
then you're expecting to face an aggressive, high-scoring vehicle list.
Yeah.
At that point, you can put yours as the defender because then you get to pick into them.
Yeah, or they've got a lot of vehicle lists, and you put them down as you can put your vehicle list down as a second defender, and they're not going to have much left over. And so there are very limited times where it might work out, but it generally won't. So my general rule of thumb is that you take your lists, your strong singles list that you would, but rather than taking a list and editing it like you would for a singles to allow for a certain matchup. So, for example, with my Ynnari list, I went through a period of time where I was going to take a 10-man Harlequin troop blob. In singles, I wouldn't want to do that because I'm trying to avoid mortars and desolator marines, which would just immediately remove that. But in teams, as long as I know I'm probably going to be able to avoid desolators, so actually maybe I can now play this 10-man. So that was a lot of testing I did, and eventually I went away from it and decided not to have it because I just think that my just 2 Star Weavers with guides is stronger. But I think those sorts of tweaks, I'd say mortal wing protection, for example. That's why with Custodes, you might well see more Custodes lists which aren't the Emperor's chosen one because you're not worried about the mortal wound protection.
Yeah.
As it is, they offer enough other strengths that actually the price is still fundamentally the best. But you can
Yeah.
definitely see arguments for taking Shadow Keepers,
Yeah.
trying to push them into...
It frees you up to specialise that little bit, doesn't it? You don't necessarily need to be mitigating all your weaknesses.
Don't drop in that character that gives you a 5-up feel no pain against mortal wounds because you're just never going to be put into Thousand Sons. It's like that sort of thing. And those are the sorts of tweaks that you can kind of look to make. But I think especially in the 5-man, just taking those 5 top kind of lists with just the tweaks that you can is kind of the way forward. And yeah, once you've done that, you've kind of got your armies, and now you need to work out what is good into each thing. So that's when people will have heard of something called a matrix comes in. You can obviously go into as much detail with these as a team as you want. We kind of don't. We just have a relatively simple system.
What is your traffic light gut feeling about this army?
Exactly. And this brings up another really important point, I think. So we've created a spreadsheet where we put down our army and then we say whether we think we're a green, which is a 15-5 win, we're a 10-10, an orange, or a 5-10 loss red. And then we've got light blue, which is I have absolutely no clue. And essentially, we don't really have much of a clue about a lot of them because we haven't played all of the matchups. And I think that's where the strong teams, or the teams with the players who run their army, know their army really well and go to lots of events with it, they're in a much stronger position because they know
Yeah.
the matchups.
Yeah.
Last year, our first teams event, we had Jack Type play for us, and he had Orcs, and he knew his Orcs so well that whenever we did the pairings, he'd be like, "Well, I'll probably score about 60 or 70 in this game. I'll win this game comfortably. This game will be like a 90-60," because he knew the game so well and the matchups so well, and that is a huge advantage. So if you can have those players that know their matchups and know their general scores, it's really, really informative.
Yeah,
It
it's very
gives you a
useful.
bit more security. So, for example, I knew that Custodes going into Harlequins, flying Harlequins was a 0-20 on Tide of Conviction because I played it twice and I knew exactly how it went. And like just having that security of knowing those particular matchups means that when you come to the pairing process, you can say, right, we want to try and engineer these matchups to get this victory.
Yeah.
Rather than, as is so often the case, you see the pairings, you're like, who wants to play into this? Anyone? Does anyone know how their matchup into Takari or Demons goes? And half your team are like, I don't know. And you're there like, and you just have to go off your gut, don't you? Whereas, you take at the highest level the WTC teams, they know these matchups inside out. They know
They
their
do.
armies matchups. They know what the best lists are, or the best armies are, and they're just well versed in kind of.
Yeah.
And they get the reps in.
They do.
I was trying to get a practice game into one of my mates, and he's like, "No, sorry, got to practice with the team." He isn't even going to the event, but his team is, and they are a team that take it very seriously. So they're just repeatedly running into
just
Iron
running
Hands.
and running. Yeah. And that's it. And that's what it takes, I think. And I think this is something I think next edition, one of the things I really want to do is as each book comes, be figuring it out and working out what I think about it in terms of how my armies go into it and how I deal with it, and just build up that sort of personal base of knowledge as it goes. Jack says that the StatCheck meta database is a great resource. That's how we filled out our matrix for games we didn't know. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I think that's useful, but I think the way individual players experience and encounter matchups also really matters. And that's where some of the curveballs in teams can come from. Like, certain heavy hitters, some players just do well into and just have good games into and have good experience with it. Like I in any teams event, if Eldari come up, I will always be nagging Chris to put me into it because I just know Eldari really well and I know how to take it apart because I play that little fragile house of cards myself and I know exactly where to kick it. So I really relish getting stuck into Eldar with whatever I'm running. And that's a personal experience thing, right? It doesn't necessarily reflect the matchups. And I've flipped matchups on the basis of that, which can be useful to have, but also shows that it's not purely rock paper scissors every time.
No. Not at all.
Very nice. Do's and don'ts we've got here, and then we can move on to listener mail. What are the big do's and don'ts, Chris?
So when I wrote that down, I definitely had something clearly in mind.
I'm sure you did, yeah.
What that thing was, I'm not entirely sure. Right, do's. So you do want to make sure you're discussing with your team and getting everyone's opinion, but don't get overwhelmed. Too many cooks spoil the broth. And I think it's very easy when you've got 2 people, 3 people kind of giving you their opinion, and after the initial opinion, then it just becomes a bit tricky to work out.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
What you want is every person telling you what they think in as confident as way as possible. But what you so you don't want them just to leave you kind of like high and dry, because suddenly that's the worst thing is when you're like, no one's around to discuss this with. Okay, well it's just up to me then. You don't want that. You want to be able to bounce your ideas off. But when you've got one person, well I think it's this, and another person saying, well I think it's this, and you're like, well someone's gonna be like.
I think basically everyone's saying their piece and then letting the captain work with it, and then standing by that decision. I think is going to be the way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Something that we haven't mentioned is this event that we're going to has the same terrain. but a lot of teams' events have different boards. You'll have a lighter
Yeah.
board and a heavier board, and that's where it's really important to have not only attacker defender lists, but have bring a guard list that's going to absolutely fucking smash on the open board, and you bring World Eaters or Eldari or Dark Eldar, something that's really melee that benefits from the dents, something that really struggles with getting shot off the board, but suddenly it doesn't because we got terrain everywhere.
Yeah, exactly that, and being ready to account for that, and the specific board you're playing on, definitely really, really good. I think one is have a very clear sense of where your team is at and sort of set expectations in and around this. We talk about managing expectations all the time, right? And I think these teams events we've got coming up are a great example. We're bringing the whole team, got a whole bunch of people playing armies they love. We know we don't have the very killer cutting edge armies in our locker at this moment in time. I think the 8-man, we're missing a couple of them. We're missing a few of them for this. Lee Churchwood's just popped up in the chat talking about Sly Marbo. So obviously we do have some killer lists and killer players. But you could look at that and go, okay, well, so we know if we hit the real cutting edge, we're going to have we're not likely to just muscle through those games, right? But we also know in a big teams environment there'll be tons of teams in the exact same position as us, and we'll have a lot of fun with that. And so it's about being relaxed with that. And there's a degree of preparation, and as someone like Ed, who's an absolute hero, has put a huge amount of a real shift in the last couple of weeks to get ready for it. And those able and willing to do that, absolutely. But also, it's your mates in it, and the reason you're going is to be in your team and play with your buddies and have a good time. So I think it's always important to have that in the back of your head as well.
But also, do you have the faith that you are the best team there?
Oh, absolutely.
We will be winning this event. If I have to 20-0 fucking Iron Hands 5 times, we're going to podium, boys, and I'll brook no arguments.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely
Maybe we'll win another Best Painted award.
Yes, we won Best Painted. That was so funny. That was funny. I must have been well down the end of the table somewhere. That's all I'm saying. I think they basically just looked at Lee's Imperial Guards and were like, "Yeah, that'll do. That's the one." Well, actually, Chris's army is very pretty. And no, to be honest, if they'd come at us from the right angle at the right time and a lot of my stuff was dead, I can completely see how they might have decided that. So I fully appreciate it.
Well, it looks good from a tabletop standard,
I think don't is with the pairings. I think you do really need to be anticipating a couple of rungs down the ladder, and sometimes in the pairings people get overexcited and try and so they spot one good matchup and try and sort it out, and then accidentally create a sort of domino effect whereby one of your vulnerable lists gets put into the nightmare scenario, and you have to be very aware of what the worst possible matchups for your team are, and thinking very hard about mitigating those first and foremost, because it's those 20-0s that kill you, right? It's the blowout games that kill you, and those are the ones you need to be preventing as much as you possibly can.
I think that's really, really important. Like, you can't afford to have, if you want to do well, you can't afford the 0-20s. You can't afford to just have those matchups. Just try and edge the games, and obviously some teams will blow out other teams because there's a big skill disparity, but in 2 evenly matched things you really cannot afford. And we had one game where both myself and Jamie heavy losses immediately.
Yeah, like instant 20-0s. We won that round though, right?
We did win the round. I think I got to like a 4-16 or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, right, well, we'll just wait around and hope everyone else can do the job. And you really don't want that.
No.
You want those games to be reasonably close. Like, go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Okay. Have fun with it, guys. I think the event's going to be awesome. It's really fun seeing teams grow. We've got so many little teams and units around the community now, and it's only going to get more exciting as time goes on. So just get stuck in and have a great time. I can't be there because I've got a wedding. I'm going to have to do real life stuff. So I'll be very jealous. I'll be checking in on the chat all day. Probably going to avoid sticking my oar in because you can't be useful from a long way away. Like, it's not going to help anyone to have me going, blah, blah, blah.
Well, when you're pissed on the Saturday night.
Oh, mate, I'll be like, yeah, what the fuck were you doing? Can't believe you.
Sunday morning you can do the pairings.
Yeah. Oh, actually, that's a good idea. Yeah. I'll just do a drunken rundown on Saturday night and get you all sussed out. That'd be great. Okay, brilliant. Right, we're going to go into listener questions.
Before we do that, do you want my anecdote of?
Have you not done it yet? Yeah. Let's do it. Let's have it. Yeah.
So the setup to this one is I thought Custodes was going to be great, I thought the meta was going to be, everyone's playing Bloody Rose Sisters, so make a Shadowkeepers list. It's dog shit. I go 1 for it, Unconquerable, which was not great, but it was okay because that was only a couple of weeks before the LGT, which meant I didn't take that shit list to the LGT, which would have been a fucking disaster. Although, to be fair, if I paired into the Emperor's Children list that was really good at that time, I think I might have had a decent chance into it. But, just because I had so much anti-melee tech.
Yeah.
But, that wasn't it. So I was like, oh, I've got to play something else. What can I play on short notice? Leviathan Warriors. Cool. Nice and easy. Plays itself. So I went and did a practice RTT run by Mark Pilkington. Lovely guy.
I love Mark. Yeah, he's so great.
Won that. I was like, this feels good. I can go 5-0 at LGT. Went LGT, went 4-1. Wasn't super happy with it, but it is what it was. Hung around for the Monday, did an RTT, which was 7 players with drops. So it was actually 4 players, including myself. It was play every player. Who won the most games? It was me. So I technically won 2 RTTs and went 4-1 at LGT within 9 days of each other. One of those was really not impressive at all. So it's only on there for for bragging reasons. Anyway, so I'd booked a week off. I'd come back from London. I'd had to do some more travel than I was expecting to. My brother, who I was with, wasn't able to ferry me around. He had some issues going on at that time himself. So I was like, cool, London's got trains. That was awful. I hated getting from where he was living in a village, because I was like, oh, you live in London. Turns out living near London isn't living in London.
Amen to that.
That's an ignorant northern viewpoint that I've got. So, I've learned. I've changed. I'm a better man. Anyway, I get home. I am shattered. I never want to play Nids again. It was the most bored I've ever been. It was entirely pointless, and all I did was gut some ITC points, which was cool, but I was like, I'm so bored. This is terrible. So I put them away in the cupboard. And I've put all my jobs off until the back end of the week. And I get a message from Ed Watts, lovely guy, Ed Watts. Pretty up there in the ITC rankings.
Oh, he's having a wonderful season. He's come through strong at the moment.
He's not bad at Warhammer, He used to be on my team, or I used to be on his team.
Yeah.
And he messaged me, he goes, do you want to play at a Teams event? England have had a drop. And at this point, I was like, I never want to play Warhammer again. But you can't turn down an opportunity like this. So I was like, yeah, sure, okay. What's the crack? And we had a bit of a chat. And so we went off. Drive down. I get the train across, actually. And I stay in his front room on a sofa, which is, the height of comfort, exactly what you want to do. And then I turn up to my first Teams event. And I have no idea what to expect, no idea what I'm doing. And I'm playing with Matt Robertson. Pretty good at the game.
He's all right. Yeah, he's all right.
James Ramsey.
He's also all right. I've heard he knows quite a lot about the game.
He does.
People occasionally mention that.
Yeah, just a couple of people. You've got Alex Petford, who's
he's also all right.
He's not bad at the game, turns out. And then Isaac Wright, who is less of a household name. But
okay.
Really good. Really lovely guy. Really enjoyed playing with him. So there were these 4, and I was like, cool. So my job here is to not fuck this up. And it was great. First game we played into Team Island. Really lovely chap. I can't remember his name for the life of me. He was playing Imperial Knights. I was like, I'm playing Leviathan Warriors. I don't care. And then turns out that Freeblade Lance list played well. Terrifying. I got my first draw, and not a WTC draw, a genuine draw. It's like, oh, this is cool, but also, thank fuck that I didn't lose this for the team.
Yeah.
Because that's the fear. You rocked up and you've got all these people. You're like, these guys are expecting to win the event. I can't let the drop the ball here. So that was that. He did smash one of my warriors, which was hilarious because it was a ratty knackered old model. He dropped something on it. It was so apologetic. I was so glad that it was him smashing something instead of me smashing it because I'm a clumsy motherfucker and it's only a matter of time. So I was like, woo! The heat's off. You've broken something of mine. This is okay. Went through, and we did, in the final round, play against the other team, England, which was Manny's team.
Oh, nice.
And I will admit, I said to Rob, I was like, you're going to have to hide me here. Like, I don't feel confident in this matchup. And I got paired into Necrons, which was Dawid's list. Played Dawid before. Really enjoyed the game. Had a great time. And then... all the scores came in, and it's like, oh shit, we've won. So
yay!
And I dropped it So there should be a hammer on top of this.
Yay!
That's the most undeserved trophy I've ever won.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that story. That's awesome.
I had a fantastic time. It was really good.
Yeah, that's super cool.
I will never claim that I won the trophy. I will say
Yeah.
that I didn't lose the trophy for
Yeah. I once got a single run for a drinking cricket team in a game in London, and which helped carry them over the line of the game. And I'm shit at cricket. I'd been promised I wasn't going to play, and then they had to bring me on at the end. And yeah, it's that same thing. It's like just don't ruin this. As long as you can manage to not ruin it, it's all to the good. Did you learn anything? I guess are there any interesting takeaways for like pairings and how they navigate that from like examining their sort of side of things?
Well, no, I didn't learn anything because I was just like, buddy, you just tell me what you want me to do. I'm playing Leviathan Warriors. You know what it does. Put me wherever. Cool. I got to play some really lovely people, which was great. I got to play a chap called Tony Chu, who is pretty involved with Team England. I don't know if he plays as much anymore. But it's funny because you'll play against people who you don't know the names of at Teams events because they don't go to the ITC events. Because turns out Teams is way better practice because you have 5 games against 5 incredible players.
Yeah.
And you get like a lot more value out of the practice there. And I was like, oh, cool. This is going to be fun. Seems like a nice chap. He chewed me. He chewed me out.
Yeah.
That was one of the games that made me go, you know what? This Tau thing might be worth a shot. The loss to Brian Seep at the Unconquerables. They were the 2 games that made me go, I think I'm going to play some Tau.
I'm going to get me some Tau.
Yeah.
I want to do a bit of that.
Hey, this is really fun. I'm playing a mobile army and they're not.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, very. I mean, it does seem like within the Teams world, the culture is so strong that, as you say, eventually players almost sort of step out of singles and prioritise that world to quite a considerable extent. And it'll be interesting seeing more and more people filtering through into that environment.
Poland based their entire tournament system on Teams.
Mm.
So
The Polish lads just fucking incredible, but you never see
them. They're
Teams.
sublime. They're absolutely sublime.
That is the thing that I really want to do. I really want to play some of the top Polish players.
Yeah, that would be absolutely awesome. No, I'd really like to do that. We played the Bulgarian team, didn't we, Chris? And I still think we should message them and say that we'll just rock up in Sofia and just play them in Bulgaria, because I think that could end in very entertaining fashion.
we should get a sponsor, stream it.
Brilliant. Yeah, jobs are good. Lee Church says, who will we draw first and why is it Team Ignite? It's Team Ignite because we all want to have a whale of a time with them and worry them for about 35 minutes. Yeah. Just like we did last time before rolling to our inevitable defeat. That's how we play. That's the only kind of game I have. Although if I'm not there, I can't match into Brian State, which would be sad.
I really want to play Vic.
Me too.
On the Savis, they played him quite a lot and I just never got round to talking to or playing him.
Yeah.
But everyone said he was super lovely.
Yeah,
That's my one regret.
Chris hates him. Chris hates him.
Absolute dick.
Just because he's really good.
Yeah, just bends Chris over every time.
Played for too many times.
My one regret in 40k, really the only regret I have, is at that dogshit RTT that I won, where there was 4 players total. Yeah, it's as bad as it sounds. In the first round, because it was day 3 of LGT, Vic didn't have an opponent. And Zach said, anyone want to play Vic? And I wish I'd said yes, but I was like, ITC points here, but I wish I'd just binned off those points. And played Vic in that round. That would have been
amazing. Yeah.
Well, the time will come to get a break instead of play some random who wasn't even in the top cut.
Yeah. If we keep doing this, all the games into all those guys will come. Just need to keep plugging away as we're doing. Great. All right. Paint Celestine says, just got back and missed most show. Don't worry, Paint Celestine. We're going to do all the listener questions now. And what you have missed is just lots of Teams talk, run up and patter. And this will obviously go out as a video immediately afterwards. So you can catch up.
It's YouTube. You can scroll right back.
Yeah. Don't worry at all. It's all going to still be there. No one ever definitively misses the content anymore. It will find you one way or the other. Okay. We're going into podcast questions. We had a few. They are really fun. So let's get stuck in. If you have additional questions, please do feel free to bung them in the chat. And as ever, Chris is very stressed today, so if you give him a super chat and a crisp £5 note to go and buy toys with, he'll be delighted. Not that you have to.
Quality shilling.
Just that you absolutely could. Self-promotion, we're really good at it. Possibly the best. And here we go. So we're going to start with the light stuff. Definitive competitive ranking of all currently released Primarchs, Heretic and Loyalist in 40k. Definitive. Yeah.
I think it'd be funnier if we just go without thinking about it.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, do we want to just write them down? Each of us write them down and then reel them off.
Okay,
See how we see it.
There? 5.
Yeah. So it's 3 baddie ones and 2 loyalist ones.
Holy shit.
Yes.
Who's the bad?
I have got mine.
Chris, that's way too much thinking. Don't think, just
I
do.
don't literally. I have barely played against these, or I've never used.
So that should tell you something.
Okay, I've got mine.
Cool. So just each of us reel off our 5, and then we can discuss, right?
Okay.
How about we all say them worst to best, but we go round number 5.
Oh, great idea. Yeah, great idea. Okay, so number 5. Chris, what is your number 5?
The lion.
I also have the lion.
I have Magnus, but I could.
Oh, yeah. I think you could definitely make the case for Magnus. And the only reason I've put the lion is because all the Dark Angels players I know are writing lists with Gilliman in. Which is a fucking desperate state of affairs. What a tragic indictment of the people that play this game. That your beloved Primarch returns, and all it does is give you the horn for maybe trying a different Primarch in his place.
So Paul's not playing it, but he did practice a listed to me, which was beautiful and terrifying.
Yeah.
He played Gilliman. He took the faction trait that gives you +1 to charge.
Yeah.
And he then, he did all the shenanigans, and basically he had like 40 Deathwing Terminators in reserves, and then he had Gilliman, and he was like, cool, so I'm going to be making 6-inch charges at you at Deep Strike. Like,
because that's the thing, and that's we'll get to Gilliman as and when he pops up. But yeah, so I think the thing with the lion at the moment, as it stands, is he's killy, but he's not infantry, so he struggles to get around. He can be killed relatively straightforwardly, as far as I can see. He's not got the sort of ludicrous durability of some of the others. So those things all mean he's a bit unwieldy to use. I'm sure there's some fun stuff that could be done with the sort of heroic intervention stuff that he gives, because that is a really awesome mechanic. But I think one of the sad ironies for Dark Angels is that they lack mobile melee infantry, which I think are the thing that would be best on. Imagine if you had Van Vets hidden around with 6-inch heroic intervention. You could pull all sorts of nonsense with that.
Imagine if you had Van Vets and you couldn't get the lion to them because he's slow.
Yeah, there is also that. So yeah, the lion at the bottom, that's a real shame, but I guess it's on the community to show us that he could be so much more. So, number 4. Ed, what have you got for number 4?
I've got the lion here. I think
so this is where I have Magnus.
Yeah, I have Magnus here.
Cool. So it's just a wash there.
So Magnus is really quite cool, to be honest. Like, I like Magnus. His powers are great. If you actually have him in a psychic matchup where the opponent can't just shoot him off the board, it's phenomenal because he just shuts everything down. You get off all your powers. He's actually really good in the Thousand Suns mirror, which is hilarious because they just don't get to do anything with their powers because he's just out denying them the whole time. But the problem is he dies, right? He just dies. He
did nothing wrong apart from not having a stat line
that's exactly it. He doesn't have. He's not durable enough. If he doesn't go first and get a bunch of defensive powers on himself, and again the fact that he needs to cast all his defensive powers on himself, that's slightly annoying because I guess you'd like those on other stuff. Then he's very vulnerable, and with the wings he's quite visible unless you have a custom Magnus model where the wings have been wound in to make him easier to hide. Which has not been unheard of in these parts.
I do know someone who has done something similar on a large model. I won't name any names, but nobody's ever called him on it because he's a fantastic painter and modeler. And he has admitted to me he did it for competitive reasons. He goes, that looks so cool! And he's like, yeah, it does.
Yeah, looks so cool, fitted perfectly behind this building.
I wagged my finger at him disapprovingly.
Nice. Okay, number 3. Chris, who's your number 3?
This is horrible. Angron.
Oh, interesting. Ooh. Interesting. Ed?
Mortarion.
Interesting. I've got Gilliman. So here we are. We've diverged quite considerably. So do you want to make the case for Angron being third, Chris?
He's. I just every time I've never played into him, but every time I've heard people who have played into him, they're just like, yeah, you can just play around him, and obviously he's very funny, and he can come back, but he can be played around. I would say that I had basically it was a toss up between him and Morty. I really couldn't decide. But
I guess they both share that weakness of it's a lot of points invested in one place that ultimately you can play around if you have the right tools, for sure. I rate Angron more highly purely because of the trapping. No full backing can be just nuts. That's a trick I think any of the others would kill to have. But I don't think it's easy to use it right. A bit like Scarbrand, I think a lot of people are told that they're good and shove them in the list, but haven't seen what the sort of swinging around into stuff that you need to do.
Are you trying to imply that 40k outside of the top percent is just people who copy other people's lists without understanding?
I would never suggest that for a second.
That's
Ed.
wild. And you know what?
I'm looking forward to people fielding lists with all 5 of these Primarchs in because they listen to this show and we're like, that sounds
actually,
amazing.
That rings true. I've had people play my lists and tell me that I don't know what I'm doing. So still not salty about that.
Yeah, nice. For me, Gilliman's like durable and fighty, and the +1 charge thing, the boosting to charge stuff, that actually genuinely is cool and useful. And I've seen White Scars lists using Gilliman to do that are very funny and very interesting. But he never rolls his dice to get back up, does he? That's the main issue I have with Gilliman. He just always stays dead when you kill him.
So it's now my turn.
Yep.
And here it is. Here's why you're wrong. This is my speciality.
Go on.
The reason that Morty is not worse than Magnus or the Lion, because he does stuff, but he just dies. I know you can give him a 5-up Feel No Pain. He's T8. He's got, a 4-up Invuln. Woo! This is the end of 9th edition, motherfucker. And that dies. If you can't put something to kill that in your list, then you've written a bad list. Or you're playing Eldar Jank and you don't expect to kill things to win the game. Those are two. You're allowed to do that.
I feel personally attacked, but that's absolutely fine.
No. That was the exception. Like for sure. You're playing like a list that's got guns in. You kill him and he dies. Like maybe you have to commit a bit more than you want to, but then what's the rest of the opponent's army doing? Trudging towards you 5 inches. He's dog shit. The other two actually have like a niche that they carve out, and then naval armies.
That's true and totally fair. In my head, I was sort of factoring in how I feel like they go into each other into this as well, and I do feel like Morty wins a slap up into most of these others. Maybe not Angron.
Well, it's a good job that we play competitive 40k and we're not Auspex Tactics. And we do Primarch offs.
GW actually did it. They do their articles, and I'm pretty sure Morty did beat Angron.
Yeah, I think he's definitely good value for that.
That might have more competitive viability than their MetaWatch lists,
Nice.
Maybe more worth there.
Right, number 2. This is where I've got Mortarion. I put Mortarion in number 2.
I've got Gilliman here.
Morty.
Cool. Sweet. Yeah, I think you can definitely make the case for Gilliman. I mean, Gilliman has actually been popping up in stuff, whereas we haven't really seen Mortarion.
Gilliman gives just so much stuff. He gives flat rerolls to everything in an edition where you can't get rerolls on everything. You can, we've seen him throughout the edition fueling the Volcon lists. He's, the Ultramarine shooting castle. Now you're seeing people put him in other factions, as you said, White Scars. He is popping up all over the shop. He's not a mainstay, but he's absolutely something that you can put in a list and feel okay about.
Yeah.
And he is going to get back up because look, none of us are ever going to play Gilliman, which means it's your
No, I am
Gilliman,
not.
Which means he's always going to get back up because that's how that rule works.
Yeah.
For you, roll a dice. For your opponent, they just flip it to a 6. It is, it is what it is.
Yeah, completely. And then number 1.
Gilliman.
Angron.
Yeah,
so Ed and I converged at the end. There you go. It's interesting. And yeah,
Angron's a weird one, isn't he? Because I looked at him and I went, there's no way anyone's going to play him. Like, he's too gimmicky. And then you just keep hearing from people whose opinions you respect, who are like, yeah, no, Angron's great. Like, I haven't spoken to him myself, but talking to somebody who talked to Robbo about it, They're like, yeah, no, really hot on Angron. He does a lot, and he makes some of the matchups just win more or like unwinnable
Yeah.
for the opponent. How does a melee army deal with Angron? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
oh
that.
no, you killed him. Cool. I'm gonna bring him in a little bit back.
Yeah.
And next time I'm gonna fly and charge forwards. He's a beast, man.
Yeah,
He's just
no,
so good.
I think that's it.
So would you say he's in the best World Eaters lists?
I don't know. I don't know enough.
No,
about
I
World
would. No, I
Eaters.
wouldn't. I wouldn't. I don't think that he is because
Would you say Gilliman is in the best Ultramarine lists?
And where
If I
do
can
those
direct your-
lists rank
If I can
relative to one
direct your
another?
attention to the last time.
They're all competitive for their army.
This is a reasonable way of looking at it. I don't dispute that. I would still
I
back a
do.
World Eaters Angrons list into an
It's a stupid way of
Ultramarines
looking at it,
Gilliman
and
list.
You're wrong. No, I think Angron you should see on the table. If you see Gilman across the table, you're like, oh, sweet, a free game.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
slightly less now that Marines have had a little bit of a.
I really
little
hope we
bit of
can
a
pair
bust.
you into Ultramarine so you can.
Go for it, man.
Yeah, I mean,
would be okay with that.
that
Oh,
Gilliman
no!
castle with all its
If
rerolls,
only I
yeah.
could turn them off.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
well,
it's interesting.
I'll just not let them. Like, what they're gonna do? Walk forward 6 or 8 inches and then shoot me? Oh, if only there was terrain.
Wow, I'm looking forward to the 20-0 then, Ed.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
go-
I think that's a list I probably could.
We're going to have to keep an eye out for Angron lists and send them Chris's way whenever they do well now, Ed, just to keep the pressure up.
For all, hold on, how many weeks we got? For all 1 month and a day of the
Yeah.
edition remaining.
God, I'm so invested in it. I'm really,
Oh yeah, it is 24th.
I'm
isn't
so
it?
deeply invested
Oh,
in the
not
rest
not
of this edition.
officially though, guys.
Not
so-
officially, no. We've heard.
No, we couldn't possibly say. So, going to take one question out of the chat here. What are your concerns about 10th edition? Paint 13 says, mine is playing the same faction with no codex for a year. One detachment could get stale.
True.
That's totally valid, although I think the level of flavour I've seen from the indexes doesn't worry me as much as I thought it could be, because these in some ways still look more interesting than 8th edition
As long as it
codexes
doesn't get
ever were,
solved
right?
immediately.
Yeah.
That's the problem, isn't it? When things just get solved.
What will
I-
what? Oh, sorry. After you. Ed.
No, I hate Index Hammer. Like, I hate that we're going back to it. I know it was needed. They needed to do a hard reset. But I don't like the fact that some armies are going to be getting their power out. And worse than getting your army a year in is getting your army immediately. Because you get to play at like a comparable level, but with a little bit more fun. And then you just go, yeah, and I've
Yeah.
got a dog shit book for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It's
This is why I'm quite chuffed that literally nothing I play has been announced yet for the release cycle. I'm like, that's fine. I will absolutely have it when they've lost the plot and started jamming them full of ridiculous stuff a bit further down the line. But yeah, and the two things that could go wrong here are the indexes can't hack it at all with the books as soon as they arrive, because then what that means is because of the slow release cycle, you're going to have like literally 1 or 2 armies at the top, which is always very dull. So the indices need to be able to hang with the new books that come out, otherwise it's going to be rubbish. Like,
I'm a little less concerned about that because they've shown that they're really willing to do balancing.
yeah, that's
so
true.
I'm not too worried about. I think it being boring, not playing an army with many rules for like 2 years. I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, for sure.
My main Battle Shock. There's so many mentions of Battle Shock at the moment. And I'm very curious to see whether it turns out to be something that is over the top and just really infuriating, or actually it doesn't turn out to be an issue at all, or is it actually well poised? I'm not sure at the moment.
It's a big dimension that they're trying to add with it, and it'll either be edition defining or it'll be a big damp squib one where it looks pretty significant. That's probably the bit we're going to have to get used to the most, isn't it, out of all the stuff that we've seen, because it will be massive in theory.
Just on to Paint Celestine's point there. The example is the Tau's Carry-On detachment will play. You always play passively till turn 3 and then go. That I wouldn't say that's true. Having played quite a lot of Tau, at the moment Carry-On is always the right choice. Some people tell you that Munkar has place in games. I don't believe them. I've tried. Sometimes I'm go, this is a perfect Munkar game. You know, I can play really aggressively, and I do it, and I win by less or I lose, and then I go, if I played that carry on, even if I did exactly the same thing, I would have, scored better. So I think you can still play aggressive with it. It's just I don't love that they've limited the detachment rule until the back end of the game. I will say that.
No, for sure, for sure. Jack says, I don't really understand how Oath of Moment will be balanced. Jack, it will be balanced by Eldar re-rolling a hit and wound on every single unit that they have. That is how you balance Marines.
And Imperial Knights re-rolling all their ones.
Oh,
wound.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okie dokie. So, then we'll go back to the Discord. So, Bloodrender asks, what do you all think is the best way to approach models such as flyers and super heavies in 40k which feel out of scale and are often either extremely
All
powerful
of them.
or useless?
Six flies back.
Chris says allow all of them. I have some specific thoughts on flyers, but I'll let you guys field anything on this you want to do first. Ed, you got any thoughts on this?
Just point them into obsolescence.
Completely.
I don't think there's any way you can play them and balance them with the way that the game is. You'd have to have a complete overhaul of the system, which maybe they've done, which I don't think they have, because we've seen the base rules. We haven't seen the rules for any flyers yet, but I think you've just got to point them to a point where they're not worth taking. But your mates can run them in your silly pickup games, your beer hammer, and who cares if it's a bit underpowered as long as it's not like dog shit.
So, big stupid tanks and vehicles should always be slightly too expensive. I think that is my opinion, because I think you don't want a meta where you have to take a big stupid tank, because the Castellan was a meta-defining unit and everyone had the same list with the big knight in and the little utility around it. That isn't particularly fun. I know Lewis wants to live in a world where we all have a big stupid tank. You can definitely get it close, right? Like the Baneblade is sort of it's a thing that you can run, and it's not going to lose all your games for you. And I think they showed they could get it close to right with that. But you don't want them to be must takes. I don't think. Probably in the same way you kind of don't want Primarchs to be must takes, because they lose a little bit of what makes them fun and special if they're in every list all of the time. For flyers, the specific thing I think is what I would have flyers do now is A, be a bit cheaper to pay for their sins, but B, they can come in turn 2 as we currently have, but strafing type ones can make their move. So if they have a bombing run type function, they can do that on their arrival turn. So suddenly bombers are actually back to doing the thing they're supposed to do. Chances are they're then a one and done and they die anyway, right? And I would be sorely tempted to limit it to rule of 2, but I think probably rule of 3 is fine. Or is it? No, it is rule of 2 for them, isn't it? For flyers now, I think that works fine. You're not going to over-invest in something that's not coming on the board turn 1 anyway, and I think that then reconciles the thing that they've lost, which is the ability to do their movement-based stuff at all, because they will just die before they do it. But it keeps them. It means you can't alpha with them, which means that you don't want to over-invest in doing it. But gives it this very cinematic. Here come the planes. They're dropping some bombs in. They're coming to help out. So that's what I would do, and I think that genuinely think that would work. So yeah, hit me up, GW. I'll write your rules. Ed,
I was just going to say 2 things. Sean saying I don't want flyers cock blocking movement. Great point.
Yes.
Fantastic tool. One of my favorite things to do with flyers. Get them out the game. Just like I'm going to abuse the shit out of them if they're there and they're playable. But like, get rid of them. Like, I'm doing it because it's good, not because it's fun. It's not fun for the other person. It's not something I'd like in the game. Jack says, what if flyers move 18 inches max? Which is such a funny mental image. You've got the plane just like 8 inches long, and then you go,
yeah. Ridiculous. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the same with artillery, isn't it? I think we all know that too much artillery and too much flyerness isn't fun. And each of them should be, I think, a gaming world where they are a bit cheaper and a bit anemic is the way. Like, they don't cost you tons, but they also just don't do much, and they're literally there for that little bit of functionality, and that's the thing. You don't want it so efficient and so effective that it can just clear tables for you.
There is a flyer I want to see, the Valkyrie, which is just a troop transport for
guards. That thing's awesome.
It can now do what it's meant to do. They can disembark and shoot guns.
Yeah.
Cool. That's great.
Sweet. That's the good stuff. Back to the chat for questions. What is the model unit that has the biggest disparity from lore to rules?
any Custodes model.
Any Custodes model. That's a very valid point.
'Cause
Harken
one
Harken
Custodes-
World Claimer is not Harken Shelf
Sadly, don't.
Shelf Claimer, more like, doesn't do
I'm alright.
anything. Absolute trash. Lilith Hesperax, famed duelist of the arenas, can barely tickle a squad of Fire Warriors.
Oh, is that not the name that you give to the succubus who kills everything on 2s?
Well,
does
yeah,
more
that's
wounds,
it. That's
and
what
then she,
what my model of Lilith Hesperax is doing. She's got a
Yeah,
whip
yeah.
these days, and she's much happier for it. But yeah, she should be so much better than she is. If you do one thing for Drakari in this edition, give her a big glow up. That's all we want. Anything else, Chris? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Ed about the Custodes thing. The Primarchs, to be fair, like, they don't necessarily. If you look at them in the lore and how much they blend and how impossible they are.
Yeah, Angron kills like whole legions, doesn't he? If he
Yeah.
wants to.
It's like
Yeah.
you just when you read the books, you're like, there's no way anyone could face up to Angron, and yet obviously in the game it's
for good reason. For good
Well, yeah,
reason.
and that's good because they're such epic characters. They're really, really impossible to balance
Mm.
in a way that reflects the lore.
Who would win, one Angron or one Planey Boy?
Angron versus the old Admech Flyers. Pew pew.
Or the Tau Flyers, which
Yeah,
both well, the things that both of the Flyers did just combine into one package.
Yeah.
Or the Harpy, same thing.
Yeah.
Okie dokie, and then back to the Discord. With armies such as Orcs and Drakari, which don't rely on but are fundamentally built around access to advance and charge, what kind of changes do you think they would benefit from to make their playstyle less based around that mechanic?
Transports.
Yeah, so I replied to this at the time, and I said, when I say assault, you say ramps. What we want is raiders that people can get out of after they've moved. Give me them sweet assault ramp raiders. That is not ridiculous, and I promise to be good with it.
I think that sounds entirely fair, because how far
Yeah.
does a Drakari transport move? It's like 16 inches or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
and how
that
far does like an Incubi move? It's like 7 inches.
Yeah.
And how far can any model move charge? Is it 36?
Yeah.
Right,
So that I think by that point
that's
you've covered the entirety of the
35
board.
inches?
Yeah, that seems completely
Yeah.
legit to me, and I'm happy with that. On a more serious note, Drakari would need good guns to move away from being purely about speed and combat. Right? They need slightly better all-round shooting rather than just the high-quality, low-volume stuff. For Orcs, Orcs can build a range of ways, can't they?
Yeah.
And I kind of like both armies in the position that they're at with the sort of Russian dolls, speed, offense, but actually once on the ground that little bit more slow and vulnerable and easy to pick off. I think that's a nice... Those are probably the two main armies that do this, although it looks like they're trying to build a few other armies to have this kind of wizardry within their ranks in 10th. So no, I quite like it. I quite like it as it is. I don't think I'd necessarily change it all that much, but if I was to take it away, I'd give them the old disembark after moving in at least a couple of places. Maybe a strat, maybe not see it's army wide, but just so you did have the option to do it somewhere with something would be useful for that reach. And thank you to Connor Nichols, who did indeed say ramps when I said assault in the chat earlier on, because that's what I wanted.
What did you say?
I said when I say assault, you say ramps. Assault.
Ramps.
There you go, boys. Very good. Nailed it. Excellent. And then we've got a message from an unknown called Davy Little. Sounds like someone.
Sounds like a cool guy.
Sounds like a
should do a show
traitor
with
who'd
him.
start a spin-off show with other people. My heart. And he says, what should we be practicing in our games of 9th as we move into 10th? Are there any transferable skills?
Winning games, Davey.
Oh my Christ, Ed, that's horrible.
No,
Yeah.
he's so what he's done is he's stuck with the drowning faction. And
That
I've
is
gone,
exactly it. Yeah.
Fuck this! I'm
He
gonna play
is-
something good.
Yeah, he's stayed behind. It's like,
He's
it's the last
captain helping the
stand.
ship.
yeah.
I'm the guy who's got on the last lifeboat on the Titanic, pushed a baby and a mother overboard, and gone, "Fuck y'all! I'm playing some Tau."
Yeah, completely. Transferable skills. I think probably the most valid skills you can be practicing are win conditions, outs, and positives and
Camping
negatives
scores.
of matchups. Yeah, exactly. Working on understanding how and why an army is getting a winning score, what you need to be doing to prevent it, what your army's ceiling is, and why that is. These are things that will still inevitably be important in 10th, and continuing it, I think. And Davey, you came in this edition, so this is something that I know will still be ongoing. That sort of baseline knowledge of just what are all the units of all the armies across the board, what are the tool pieces and tool kits of all these different armies. That's something that you can always be learning and building on. And the more familiar every army is by the time you get to 10th, the quicker you'll absorb what changes are coming in for them and what that's going to mean for you. Because you do reach a slightly actually depressing point where you're just like, I've seen all of the units, I've seen all of the things, I know what all the things are supposed to do, and whilst a bit of the magic is gone, you are then very well equipped to win games.
Sounds like you need to do a cover version of "I've Been Everywhere, Man," just with all of the units.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well up for that.
One thing I would add though is if especially for me, once tournaments are done and that, from what I can tell in terms of the playing, the hardest thing to get the head around is going to be the new fight phase. And there's going to be, they've tried their best to remove the jank that you can currently do. And all they've done is enabled more jank, but just made it a lot harder to do. So trying to get your head around the fact that, right, now I need to move models to base them so that now I can move other models in other directions because I'm allowed to do that. I mean, it just makes no sense to me how they manage to fuck this up every time. But
It is
essentially,
funny.
we have had basically two editions of manipulating the fight phase and the charge phase for all this extra movement. It's still going to be possible to, not as big an extent, but it's still going to be possible to in some extent, but it's going to be complicated to do. And you're going to have to practice it. You're going to have to get the models out on the table. You're going to need to set up a scenario. You're going to need to get the rules out in front of you, follow what the instructions allow you to do, and really then just work out so that by the time you get to an event, in the same way that now we're like, right, I'm going to charge here, I'm going to be an inch away, right, I'm piling around 3 inches, but I'm getting slightly closer, right, I've killed you, great. Now I'm going to use this other unit, which has got 6 inches of movement, because it's got 3 inch piling and 3 inch consolidate to go in this direction.
Yeah.
Like, all those things which is second nature to us,
They're not going to be there.
We've done them so many times, but this whole concept of, right, positioning yourself, right, I've got to base here, so where can these go? It just will take reps, and the sooner you start getting those, it depends how sad you are, but if you do just get those models out, sit there with the rules and just practice moving them for half an hour, just to get into habit, then when you get to your practice games, try and apply that.
Yeah.
And that'll mean when you get to your tournaments, then you're able to get it. And I think early on, trying to get those things down will be a bit of an advantage. So the sooner you start, the sooner you can get back.
I think the fight phase is actually going to be more pivotal this edition. Something that I missed on the stream that I did with Davey when we went through all the rules that definitely weren't leaked was that you don't have to charge a unit to fight it. You can charge something else. And
if you get close enough, great.
Yeah, and you don't have to move the closest model first. You can pick.
It's all a bit Sigma, isn't it? It's all a bit Sigma.
What you can do is move a model that is like 7 inches away, and then use that for shenanigans. So you could pick like a model that's halfway back in the unit, and then use that, and from there do your pivoting. And I haven't fully worked it out yet. I'm gonna have to reread that Google Doc. But I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming, and it's going to happen to you, and you're going to feel real mad.
Yeah.
And then 2 events later, you're going to be doing it. That's how it's going to be.
That's the way it works, baby.
It's going to feel like a gotcha, and then you're going to learn it, and you're going to use it, and you're going to be like, oh, this is actually incredible. Why was I not doing this before?
It's quite a good way of ignoring Overwatch. Just charge the things that have got the scary things, and then which don't have scary Overwatch, but then just move towards the things that do have.
Although the scary Overwatch things will have Overwatched you in the movement phase anyway.
Flames all of a sudden. Oh, you moved close to me. Oh, you're now dead.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
It's not going to be very fun for the stuff you and I like. That really requires some play around. But that's all for the good. I want flamers to be relevant. So
Overwatch doesn't require it to be the unit that was charged.
Oh, does it not?
So, yeah. So it's
Aw.
and you can do it when a enemy unit is set up or when they start or end a normal advance, fullback, or charge move. So when they start the
Wow.
charge move, you just go, cool. I'm going to overwatch you with this big tank.
A
that's got 6
flamer's
flamers."
mental. Is that what this
So, but
is?
you could just fall back from
I
something
think
and
they
flames
might
could
be.
just-
Yeah.
My initial thoughts, no, I don't like the way that they're setting up Tau. It looks like more of a static gun line than a go forwards and kill, which is how I prefer to play them. But I'm thinking 2 units of 3 suits with double flamer and burst cannons.
Yeah, man. Just soak
You
up
know?
that forward pressure. Yeah, that's cool. Scrivo says, I'll miss my micro movements. I'm going to give him a little shout out here because it is from Scrivo that I learned all of the intricacies of the fight phase because I had no idea. And it was as you say, you get soundly moved around in all sorts of interesting ways and you feel a bit disgruntled about it and then the next time you're doing it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Scrivo, for teaching me the true art that is melee combat in 40k.
Because I play shooting armies so much, I've only just learned how to avoid heroic interventions. A quick tip for anyone who's playing an event in the next 3 or 4 weeks: charge the unit that you want to avoid the heroic intervention. Stay just within an inch away, slightly closer to the model that you want to fight. Pile in away from the heroic intervention. Oh look, they're not within an inch. They can't fight. Boom, super easy.
I
Fuck
did
your
a
opponent.
video on this.
Yeah, Chris has done a video on this.
Obviously, Ed has learnt that from my video. So thanks for sharing my video, Ed.
Ed watches,
No
like
worries.
we all watch all of our content all of the time.
I consume no 40k.
No. There's no time left after making it, man.
No, I just consume CS:GO and League of Legends content because
Oh, sweet.
I spend like 40 hours a week thinking about Warhammer anyway. I got to have an off switch at some point.
Squirrel says, I learn all my stuff from Chris.
Nice.
As you will know,
Good point.
Scrivo was my first ever competitive game.
Yeah. Oh, and triangles. That's Ed's influence. Triangles are a big deal. Wonderful. Okay, we've got one final question, barring any late entrants from the chat, and this is currently revealed unit for 10th that you are most looking forward to using. I don't think I've seen anything yet that really gets my... Oh, Death Shroud look cool, or Blight Lord Terminators, whichever the Death Guard Terminators they showed, they look fun. They have some cool rules. I like the look of them. Mostly I like the idea of playing Death Guard where I'm allowed to deep strike in your turn. That really does change the nature of that game.
Who cares about the 4-inch movement? Where
Yeah,
I'm already
exactly.
there.
Got
I've
Death
got
Shroud,
bubbles
Death
to
Shroud
put.
dropping in every little pocket you give me and flaming you. The dream.
It's not a model, but I think the strands of Fate for Eldari will be really interesting.
Oh yeah, that's
Just
pretty
being
crazy.
Kind of like, it's the fact that you're rolling your 12 dice and then you get to just use them advance ahead of the game. You think, oh, I've got 6, cool, I've got a big gun which does devastating wounds. So great. I don't know, like you say, D cannon is D6.
Yeah.
2. Oh, I'll use this 6 and all of a sudden that's 8 mortal wounds on you, sir. Right,
Yeah.
that's although that'll be quite nice, but at the same time you are going to roll some 2s and 3s which are potentially not great. So
Oh, there's uses though, right? Sometimes you just know that's enough. Like,
yeah.
Or
but
if
it's
you
also
have a
just less-
Farseer and you could turn them into 6s.
oh,
That'd be quite nice.
nice
but-
for them to incentivize taking a Farseer for once.
Yeah. Why can't it be the Autarch? Why can't it be the Autarch?
Yeah, poor Autarch. It's just like, I'm awesome, and they're like, but
I've got
are
really
you magic?
Yeah.
No,
I've got
then
really-
stay at home.
This edition feels like he's more likely to see use.
Yeah, I hope so. If he's a plug-in, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
You're going to put him in some Howling Banshees or something, and they're going to fucking slap.
I kind of hope stuff like Assassinate just goes away, and you can just have a bunch of characters running around without any concern, because I think that's fun. I just think that's neat.
I just think it's neat.
I just think it's neat. I'm trying to think. Was there anything else? I played Dave yesterday, and it's like if you imagine that you had Fate dice, not just for your damage, but also for his saves. That was how it went. It was literally not a single in-run made, and every single D6 plus something damage shot I made was just like, here is all of the damage. You can have all. It was like the Fire Dragon Exarch's D6 plus 4 gun. You're like,
Yeah.
there is 10 damage. Have yourself 10
Was he,
sweet damage.
Was he playing his Niddar list? Was that what he was playing?
It was the Nid Drop Pod Gorgon thing.
Oh, okay.
I think it's his because it's for the league. It was his older. It's an older iteration. He said that he's been cooking one up with you.
Yeah, we've been talking about a really interesting list.
Niddar is so good. I love that concept already.
I actually probably shouldn't say because I don't know if he wants to take it to an event and win it. So I'll keep it.
Oh yeah, no, very wise.
We'll
very
reveal
wise.
it when he wins whatever event he takes it to.
No, exactly that. That's very, very sensible. Yeah, for sure. Great. Okay.
I do have some units that I'm excited about. Please, sir,
Sweet.
can I talk?
Yes. Sorry, I hadn't realised that we
it's
hadn't
all right.
done it. I missed that in the excitement.
It's because I talk all of the time incessantly.
And so do I. And when it's just difficult. Where do we go from here after you?
Yeah. Oh, Chris, why do you bother turning up? So, quick honourable mention: Doomsday Cannon. I'm so jazzed that it is no longer the mildly inconvenient Tuesday Cannon. It is actually gonna slap. It's gonna wound everything in the game on 3s at least. It's got a decent number of shots. It's still got good damage. It's gonna do mortal wounds. Pew 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 pew. Run 3 of them. Gonna be great. The actual one, the Alaris Terminators that they revealed today, they look fucking awesome.
Yeah.
T7. I know vehicles are going up, but that's a dreadnought. That's a 4-wound dreadnought, like straight up.
But their rules looked great, man. I was really chuffed with the Custodians release. They're not an army I like, but I just thought the rules all looked great. Really nice spot.
I sent a long message to my Custodians buddy, and he sent me a long message back that I haven't had a chance to read. But I'm looking forward to just talking more Custodians because they're fantastic.
Oh
the redeploy
yeah.
that you can do it. The fact that they're going to get some sort of cool rule on their data sheet. Well, they're going to get 2. One I think is going to be like a stratagem, because as we can see, the Alaris, they get the Slayers of Tyrants, which is like the whatever the strat's called. Might even be Slayers of Tyrants right now. Good for killing big tough things, basically. And then they've got from Golden Light where they redeploy a unit, which is just
that just honestly just looks so fun. So fun.
The points, like we've got to see the points, but my first thought is like, why am I not running 3x3 of these?
Yeah.
In every game, like it looks incredible.
It looks absolutely phenomenal. Really, really cool.
Yeah, I really love that. Even though people are already going, well, the math says Guardian Spears are better into almost everything. I love that they've really distinguished the 2 profiles on the melee weapons.
Yeah.
Like the axes, it's finally damage 3, but it's worse AP, and you get less attacks, and you hit on a worse. Maybe that's a little too weak. Maybe they needed something additional on. But you know what? By the time they write the codex, maybe they'll balance that out. It's just nice to see more defined. We're seeing things have proper roles instead of everything just be like, what's the best? What's the highest volume of mid-strength, mid-AP damage weaponry you can pump out?
This is where taking the scale up really helps, doesn't it? Because you're not as painted into a corner with what options you have.
Yeah.
And that's super cool. Autocannon meta inbound. Here we go. Autocannons everywhere. Let's do it. Why not? Cool. Any other thoughts, Chris? Did you have anything else? Or no, you've said your units already, haven't you? Excited?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've been playing Custodians for the last 4 or 5 years now. So it's always going to be interesting to see. All my stuff's modelled with axes, so I am slightly sad that the weapon skills got worse, the attacks have got worse, and the AP has got worse, all for that extra 1 damage.
The attacks haven't gone worse. It's just the attacks have got better elsewhere.
Oh right, but
you've got quite nice access to exploding 6s and stuff, don't you? Which is effectively a +1 to hit anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a +1 to hit on damage 3 weapons. I can see why maybe they didn't want that on 2s as well, right? It's like 100% efficiency on damage 3.
I think it'll be very interesting to see how, because Custodians are also a hard army to balance.
Yeah.
They've got those smaller elite armies. So we saw them when they first came out; they were just so strong. So it'll be interesting to see, because if they don't have the ability to hack all these vehicles or take down these vehicles that we're expecting to see early doors, then maybe they won't have a place. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure.
Because a big thing for them has obviously been the OBSEC infantry. Well, the Terminator was OBSEC 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Goes up to 3 if you have a banner.
So up to 3 with a banner, so you get 3 of them on objective. That's OBSEC 9. Well, that's still not. I mean, I don't know.
It's not bad.
It's not bad.
Maybe we're going to move away from 3-man units. Maybe we're going to see actual. One of the things that one of the complaints I've seen about it on the early doors is that because Trajan no longer rerolls, their damage output is going to go down, and losing the reroll from Emperor's Chosen as well, which is true, kind of. The exploding 6s that you can put on kind of balances that out. You lose a bit of the jank from the Katars, but that's fine because they're like useless. The best thing in the game, useless.
These look much more flexible and interesting.
They look
and-
flexible. You pick them, reactively, which is
Yeah,
just great.
that's the thing. Yeah.
But something I think people might not be thinking about is we haven't even seen the buffs that the leaders bring yet. But you might not take many of them because custodians are pretty self-reliant. They're good profiles. So if you're going from spending 500 points on HQ, which is I'm spending 200 points on Trajan, 180 on the bike captain, then 100 on the 100 and something on the banner boy. If that goes down to just 185 for a bike captain, I've got 300 plus points, more models. So yeah, the individual model might have slightly less output, but I've got another model in every squad. And then they're really tough to shift as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm keen.
Yeah, I thought it looked fun. I just think armies like it's the same reason I can think about Death Guard and be a little bit more excited is if there are just a few more ways to play around the slow movement of those kinds of armies, they become way more interesting in my eyes. And they've just given Custodes a couple of tools today that look really cool in that, whilst continuing to make them just a world-ending force in the fight phase, which is what they should be. Right, stuff goes in and does not get what it wants out of them, which is the way they're supposed to be. Awesome.
Units charge me, then they lose. You
Then
can't
they die.
explain that.
Yeah. I'm gold, you're not, you're dead. Very straightforward order of operations there. Cool, we're going to sign off on that. Scrivo says tomorrow, lads, be wying, and that's absolutely right. Orc reveals tomorrow, super exciting. I'm sure we can bother Aaron for his thoughts on that and John for his thoughts on that soon, as well as Ed. We've got a bunch of Orc players. Hopefully, they're one of those flavourful armies, so you want to see something good for them. So, yeah, thank you very much to everyone for tuning in. Really awesome to see you all. Thanks for chipping in the chat. And enjoy the rest of your week. And I'm sure we'll be back to let you know how our two brave teams got on as they both finished first simultaneously at the Birmingham Teams event and conquered all before them. So be well, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.